Oh, I'm like, oh dear. I'm like, I don't have a bra on. You can see all my nipples.
It's all right. It's all women.
That's how we started the recording. I was tapping into my feminine wisdom, and I felt like I needed some flow and some ease after a very full-on morning. So I'm super excited that there's a couple of you that have been able to be on live, which feels amazing. And I have some notes and some things that I really do want to share around, you know, tapping into our feminine wisdom and honoring our cycle. Hey, Monica, and really coming back into how to trust our bodies and really love on our bodies so that we can come into this place of harmony. And when I say harmony, I don't just mean that in terms of, you know, just one aspect of life or one aspect of health. I mean that in the sense of the word, where all of our systems are harmoniously in alignment and really functioning together. And so I want to take you through a bit of a background about the nervous system and how our nervous system works, so that you can start to understand how, when we are not in harmony or not in resonance with our body and with our nervous system and with essentially our feminine wisdom, how these things can actually get out of kilter, and how when they get out of kilter, they create flow-on effects that potentially have very, very far-reaching ramifications. And so as I share things, you know, please, you know, Monica and Chaitanya, like if questions come up or if things, you know, come up for you, please, you know, type them in the chat box, or like if you want to actually, you know, speak to them so that we can dive into a conversation and really almost like, you know, put you in the hot seat, so to speak. I know for myself that when I'm really learning and really receiving through other people's experiences as well, and when I'm in a space where, you know, people are feeling, you know, comfortable and safe enough to express what's happening for them, I receive so much from information from that as well. So please feel free, and I encourage you to really share what's on your heart and what's present and alive within you, and maybe things that you're working through or overcoming or, you know, struggling with, and we can really dive into the heart of what might support you in terms of your journey and your best next steps as well. So when it comes to the body, and when it comes to hormones, and when it comes to weight, and when it comes to digestion, and when it comes to productivity, and when it comes to metabolism, and when it comes to, you know, cycle regulation and all of these wonderful things, essentially every single thing that is happening within our body and from a health perspective and from a hormonal perspective is under the direct control of our nervous system. And so it's super vitally important that we understand how this works, because if we have core problems that are in our nervous system, then that is going to create dysfunction or a flow-on effect within the rest of our bodies. And if that flow-on effect or that dysfunction or that increase or decrease in terms of output or whatever it might be carries on for long enough, then that creates changes in the hormones or whatever it is that's regulating processes further down the track. And the reason why our nervous system's doing this is because we live our life through our nervous system. And so whatever we are experiencing in our life, I know you've learned so much about like tapping into feminine wisdom, different, excuse me, just had a phone call come through, different aspects of our whether we're in masculine energy or feminine energy, you know, whether we're like overcompensating or overfunctioning or overdoing, what happens when our bodies, you know, in increased stress. When we're experiencing life, or when we're living life, we have these interpretations that we're making about every single experience that's happening at any given time within our reality. And the interpretation of these experiences, and whether they are deemed to be stressful or whether they're deemed to be safe or whether they're deemed to be, you know, good things or eustress, which is like a stretching or an increasing in our capacity, all of that's being determined and derived through how our nervous system and our brain assesses the situation. So what actually is our nervous system, right? Like we often hear like these blanket statements around like, well, what our nervous system is, but not really many of us actually understand how it actually works. So I want to give you a really simple overview of how it works. So we've got our brain. It's literally sitting up here, and our brain talks to our cells, to our hormones, to our organs, to our muscles, to every single cell and every single gland of our body via communication pathways. And those communication pathways are essentially our central nervous system, so our spinal cord, and then all of the nerves that offshoot out of that to all the different cells in our body. So it's a really, really, really intricate and in-depth information highway, where information is going from the brain to the body and then is being fed back from the body or from the senses back up into the brain. Now, if there's any interference to that, then that's going to essentially short circuit those pathways. And because there's a end organ or an end cell or an end gland or an end muscle that is receiving communication from our brain or from our nervous system, any break or dysfunction within that communication is going to have a flow-on effect. And if that flow-on effect if that break or dysfunction has happened long enough, then core problems in our spine and our nervous system can affect our bodies in ways that we understand or ways that we don't understand. What we also need to understand is that our nervous system is made up of two parts. So we have what's called our sympathetic nervous system, and we have our motor nervous system, which is our muscles and our glands, our muscles, so for example. So I can control, it's our conscious part, I can control to a certain extent what is happening within my motor system. If I want to walk a certain speed, if I want to go running, if I want to pick up weights, I have conscious control over that part of my nervous system. The thing with our motor part of our nervous system is it makes up about 10%, only 10% of our nervous system and what it's designed to do. And so when we are feeling pain within our nervous system, basically in order to get to that point, at least 50% of our neurological function has to have decreased before we're actually feeling that at a motor level, at a muscular level within our body. So let me know if that's all making sense. The other part of our nervous system, which is essentially responsible for about over 90% of the job of our nervous system, is things that are happening in our body automatically. So there is a lot of things that are going on in your world and in your life automatically that you do not think about one iota unless they're not working. And then you start thinking about them and feeling frustrated about them because you know that it's not working as it's designed to. So what does that mean from an automatic point of view? So if we think about, like, I'm sitting here right now, and about an hour ago I had lunch. And so I'm not having to consciously tell my body to send amylase and digestive enzymes into my food and my throat and my mouth to start breaking down the proteins and the carbohydrates. I'm not having to tell my food how to actually go down, the esophagus and into the stomach. I'm not having to tell and consciously eject hydrochloric acid into my stomach to break down those foods even further. I'm not having to tell that food to then push it down like into the large intestine and then into the small intestine, where all of the nutrients start getting absorbed and assimilated and pulled into the bloodstream, and then the waste product gets kind of pulled out. I'm not having to coordinate any of that, thank goodness, right? Because how busy would our body be, and how busy would our day be and our brain be if that was literally the things that we were having to coordinate? I'm not having to tell my lungs to breathe. Like, that's all happening unconsciously underneath the surface. I'm not having to tell blood, to pump around my body. My body just automatically knows that the right amount of blood to pump through my body at rest. It also automatically knows that if I jump up and sprint, there's automatic processes that increase the pumping of that blood, yeah? And so when we start to feel into all of this, like, we start to realize how amazing our body is, and particularly how amazing our nervous system is. I don't have to, you know, I've had one baby. I don't have to tell my body how to grow a baby. You know, it all just unconsciously, automatically happens without any conscious control whatsoever. Now, there's things that I can do within my environment, of course, to support that that optimal functioning and that automatic functioning, but I'm not having to sit there and direct and control the traffic of all of it. And so why this is important is this: within our automatic part of our nervous system, the part that's, you know, literally making sure everything's happening behind the scenes, there's two parts to that. So we have what's called our sympathetic part of our nervous system, which is the part where there are fight and our flight, fight, flight, or freeze. So the part where that gets activated when we're really it was designed for short-term acute stress. So the part of our nervous system that was designed to activate when we were running away from tigers or when our life was literally in danger. The part of our nervous system that was designed to activate if we needed short-term strength and if we needed all of our resources to be diverted from our central organs out to our muscles. If we think about what's happening when our life is in danger, digesting food is not a priority. It's really not. Making babies, not a priority. Hormone regulation, stuff that. Like, who needs to worry about monitoring our hormones when our life is literally in danger? So that system is designed to shunt our blood and all of our energy and all of our core focus away from our central organs, away from our inner wisdom, and out into our periphery, so that we can literally save our life. It is super, super effective. It is super amazing. It does its job fantastically. However, we now live in a modern world, where that system is being activated continuously throughout the day because of how modern society is set up. So literally, you know, seeing a red light, for example, our child crying, you know, living in a world of overfunctioning where we might be the primary caregivers at home, but we're also working full-time jobs, for example. And when we're working in these full-time jobs, but literally then also kind of primary caregivers to a high degree at home, we're very much in our masculine doing energy, and there's not that time for that inner replenishment and that inner coming back to self and that inner coming back to self connection, which is what our feminine really craves. Like, we're just not, and I know that you're so aware of this now, we're just not designed to go like females are designed. And this is also dependent on your unique biology and your unique epigenetic signature as well, in terms of how your unique makeup and unique blueprint is set up. But females at their core, they're designed to receive first, to replenish first, to nourish first, and then they're designed to go. And we can make magic happen during those times, but we're not necessarily designed to be sprinting or running a long endurance race for days and days and weeks and months and years on end, which is what I would say most women in society are doing. And it's certainly what most women that in my practice, when I was, you know, working very much full time as a chiropractor, I would see a lot of women who are very much depleted within their adrenal and their, you know, their hormonal systems and their digestive systems, which would all come back to what was happening underneath the surface at a neurological level. And so it's so important, if we're going to understand what happens hormonally and digestively and all of those, and mood wise and all of those beautiful things, that we understand how this nervous system functions. So if we tune into the other part of our nervous system, that's called our parasympathetic part of our nervous system. And it is the part of our nervous system where it's very much about rest, digest, repair, make babies. Okay, so these functions are designed to be done at rest. These functions are designed to be done when we are calm and centered and connected and tapped in within our bodies. These functions are not priorities when our life is in danger. When our sympathetic nervous system is activated, what basically happens is it down-regulates and shuts down our parasympathetic nervous system completely until we come out of the other side of that threat. So while that system is very much, while the sympathetic nervous system is active, the parasympathetic nervous system is shut down. Now, where this becomes a problem is when the sympathetic part of our nervous system has been activated for long periods of time. And so what I would often see within women that I cared for within practice is that a lot of women would come into practice and they would have they would be super tired, but they were wired at night, so they were having a really difficult time sleeping. Or they'd got to a point where they literally, it didn't matter how much they slept, but they still they still never had enough energy. They would often feel super bloated. So they'd start their day kind of feeling fine and with a flattish tummy, but the more they ate or as they went through the day, the more bloated they would feel. They'd often have really low-grade headaches. They'd kind of just have this brain fog type feeling that was just like your brain couldn't get fully activated or didn't have the speed or the clarity of thought to be able to actually conduct tasks. They'd also have this kind of a space where in order to actually get stuff done, they then required extreme deadlines and extreme amounts of stress in order to be able to motivate them and kickstart them to take action to actually get something done. And let me know if this is resonating or making sense for any of you as well. The other thing that would often start to happen is that they would, their periods would change. So rather than having, a predominantly 28-day cycle, whereby, they would bleed and it would be, yes, there might be a little bit of emotion and a little bit more sensitivity and a little bit more of a desire to go introspectively. Internal, I should say. There wasn't like massive amounts of PMS. There wasn't, super tender and swollen breasts. There wasn't like all of the emotional necessarily roller coaster that a lot of women feel with their menstrual cycles. And there certainly wasn't like a lot of women that I would work with would either lose their cycles so they would become super irregular, or they would have cycles where there was a lot of clotting or a lot of heavy bleeding, or extreme amounts of pain as well. And all of those things are just simply not what the body is meant to experience from a hormonal and from a cyclical point of view. The last thing that would usually happen is that they would have all of these random other symptoms as well, like super tight shoulders, like ridiculously tight shoulders, and then they would start to put on weight. And it wouldn't matter how much they exercised or how much they restricted their food intake at that point, nothing would budget. And often if it was really bad and their neurological systems had been really dysregulated and they'd really kind of been living in a way that was completely incongruent with their feminine wisdom, then what would happen is that they would put on weight when they were exercising and eating in the way that they thought they should be eating in order to lose weight. Now, it's interesting because if we kind of take all of those contexts and then put it into the context of feminine wisdom, following something that's super rigid and a diet and a really strict way of doing things and not allowing your intuitive wisdom and your feminine wisdom to kind of guide you through something is kind of the exact opposite of how the feminine body is designed to work. And so the way that women in Western society, or the way that Western society has taught women and has taught people how to release weight from their system, is very much set up around a very, very, very small percentage of the population for whom focusing on movement and food as their first point of call works really well. And that is how our entire fitness and health system has been set up. It's been set up to honor people who have actually very high metabolisms, who actually do benefit from eating 5 to 6 meals a day, and who benefit from moving their body first things in the morning and regularly. For most of the population, that's literally not what our bodies are designed to do. Like a lot of people, if we can tap back into our wisdom, what a lot of people start to find, and I hear this with women constantly, and particularly if I've tested their epigenetic profile as well and really seeing what their optimal gene expression is, like a lot of women actually aren't designed to get up until 8 o'clock in the morning, and the same is true for men. A lot of people are designed to have a slower start to the morning. A lot of people are designed to, you know, eat more of a vegetarian diet or more of a vegan type diet. Some of us are designed to have more of our food at the start of the day, and others are designed to have more of it at the end of the day. Other people have natural high energy in the morning, which starts to kind of decrease as the day goes on. And other people are the opposite, like their energy actually increases as the day goes on. And so if we're constantly looking outside of ourselves and looking to some guru to tell us how we should live our life, or we should get up and do the 5 a.m. club, or we should do this, and we need this amount of nutrients or this amount of stuff, it just doesn't work. And I really got this when I became a mum, because I had so many of these things in my head, and I was like, oh my goodness, like my child hasn't had any vegetables today, like, oh, the horror, the absolute horror, like I'm a terrible mother. But what I started to realize is that if I tracked his kind of intake, and granted he was given healthy nutritious choices, if I tracked his intake over the course of a few days or over the course of a week, what I started to see was that there was a theme that happened over the course of that week. So he might have 3 days where he was pretty much vegan and all he wanted was vegetables. There might be another day where he just wanted potatoes and bananas. And then there might be 2 other days where all he wanted was avocados and salmon. And that's kind of like an extreme kind of observation and a very specific observation. But when I actually started to map it, I was like, he is intuitively listening to the inner wisdom that his body has given him. And what happens, and we see this very clearly with children, is that if you provide them an environment where they're receiving nutritious choices, where they're able to make movement decisions that are optimal for their body and for their unique expression, meaning can they squat, can they roll, can they all of those things, then they will make those choices that are in alignment with what their brain and their body requires to develop. And all of those choices, particularly from a movement perspective, actually also drive the development of the brain and of the nervous system. And so we're set up in this very unique ecosystem, if you like, where one thing drives the other. And it's about coexisting in harmony versus any one thing being more important than the other. And so what will often happen, and it can fry your brain a little bit or a lot sometimes at the start when you're really tuning back into your feminine wisdom to guide your health choices and your food choices and your nutrition choices and your movement choices, for example. But what would happen is that woman would come to me thinking that they needed to lose weight, or they had this problem, and so therefore they would use this. And actually, the answer in order to re-regulate your system and have it coming back into harmony was not me generally telling them what to eat. And it was generally not me telling them how to move. It was actually me saying to them, okay, like we need to stop everything, basically. And so we would have frameworks, and we would have discussions about what nutritious choices would be. But the reality also was that these women, and most women that I meet and most women that I talk to, were actually pretty highly educated. And most people know generally what food is going to be nutritious for them and what foods are not going to be nutritious for them. Most people know that there's a certain level of movement that probably their body desires to be doing, or a certain type of movement that they might just not be allowing. And so when we can peel back the layers and actually go, okay, like, what is it that is going to be best for my body, and how do I get to start to honor myself? And if I was to actually, and this is a beautiful journaling practice for you, like, given that I'm so connected to my feminine wisdom and I know exactly what my body requires, like, how is it that I nourish it and move it and care for it on a daily basis? And just simply starting to dive into, those questions from a place of like self-honoring and being truly connected to the inner wisdom of your body, and starting to ask your body, if you are experiencing hormonal dysfunctions, or you are experiencing stubborn weight, for example, that you just can't get rid of no matter what you do, or you do have aches and pains in your body, yes, absolutely seek support for those things. And please understand that the reason that those things are there in the first place is because your body has been under different types of stressors over a period of time that it cannot integrate. And those types of stresses either come in the form of thoughts, so our mindset, the emotional kind of mental thoughts that are running through our body. They come in the form of toxins, so chemicals, toxic water, preservatives in food, chemicals from sprays, cleaning products, things that we put on our skin. We really get to understand that, our skin is the largest organ on our body. And so when we put things onto our skin that have chemicals in them, they're getting direct access to our bloodstream. And so all of those things, they make a difference, and they matter in terms of what is loading or overloading onto our system. And then the other type of stress that can overload our body is physical stress. So trauma. So, a birth, for example, from a baby, it's pretty, unless it's even if it's supernatural, it's still a really intense physical process for both mum and baby. Being pregnant, sitting on a desk all day, all of these different things, our posture is also directly feeding information up to our brain about how our nervous system's functioning. So if we're sitting at computers all day, as soon as our ear goes in front of our shoulder, like the middle of our shoulder, what that's sending back up to our brain is that literally our life's in danger. Because if you think about the position or the posture that we would be in if we were running away from tigers, our head would be forward, our neck would be tense, our muscles would be contracted, and we'd be, running. And so it's very then easy to understand when you start to think about this logically and you start breaking this down. It's like, oh, okay, cool. So my posture and the things that I am habitually, the positions that I'm habitually putting myself into, they're also having direct feedback and a direct transmission to my brain. And my brain is interpreting the body signals of where my body is sitting or, in space the majority of the time. And that is also giving my brain a story to interpret and respond to. And your nervous system is designed to react and to respond to the environment that it is being housed in. And so if it thinks that, sitting at a computer is activating that fight or flight part of your nervous system, guess what's going to happen? You're going to have stress hormones released into your body, signaling to your body and all of your organs and all of your glands and all of your muscles and all of your hormones that your life is in danger. Your brain and your nervous system has no idea that you're just sitting in front of a computer. All it knows is that your body is in a life threat and is in a posture that it only ever would have been put into if you were running away from a tiger, if your very life was being threatened, if your life was in danger. And so if we're in these experiences or these situations long enough or chronically or continuously over time, then what starts to happen is that our adrenal glands in particular, which are the ones that release the different stress hormones, the short-term stress hormones like adrenaline and the longer-term stress hormones like cortisol, they start to get very dysregulated and dysfunctional. And unlike what a lot of people will say, it's like, oh, my adrenals are fatigued. Well, it's like, well, your adrenals don't really get fatigued. Actually, they're working pretty damn hard. They're responding to the information that they're being given, but they are now very dysfunctional because they're being given incorrect information, or not incorrect information, they're being given dysregulated input. They're being given dysregulated input from the brain. And it's actually incorrect input because the life's not actually in danger when you're sitting in front of your computer, but your brain and nervous system doesn't know that. It doesn't know that when you slam your foot on at the red light, it doesn't know that you're not under threat. It doesn't know that you're not going to get eaten by a tiger. It doesn't know that when you've had a massive day and 50 deadlines and you've got home and the 2-year-old is losing its marbles and throwing tantrums and peanuts and nuts and everything else onto the kitchen floor from the cupboard, it doesn't know that that's not a life-threatening danger. It just knows how it's responding internally. Yeah. And so the biggest gift we can give ourselves is to catch what's happening, to connect to whatever that feeling is within our body. And I kind of like to imagine that I'm kind of like capturing that feeling or whatever feeling is coming up within my body in a big expansive bubble or in a big expansive balloon, so that I can give my body and my being space. Now this works across every single level I found, whether it's an emotional thing, whether it's a physical response, whether it's a mental thing, whether it's like an overrunning of mental thoughts and mental programming that's happening in our mind, like whatever is happening, it works every time. Now, and when we connect, we can let that part of our body or whatever it is that we're feeling, all that we get to tell it is it's just like, I give you permission to be present. Like, it's safe. I've got you. It's safe to be present and it's safe to be expressed within my body. Because so often what we're doing subconsciously and underneath the surface, and we don't realize it, is that we're actually resisting and actually attempting to run away from the potentially uncomfortable feelings or mental thought processes that might be arising within our body or within our brain. Okay. And so in the doing of that, in the resisting, we're fighting. Yeah. In the running away, we're fleeing. If we're completely stuck in inaction and overwhelm and procrastination, we're in freeze. And those are the three main responses of our sympathetic nervous system. And so unbeknownst to us, like, we don't realize that we're actually signaling primal biology and primal neurology within our system. We just think that our 2-year-old's having a meltdown, or in my case, the 6.5-year-old's having a meltdown, and, you know, the whole world's breaking loose. And our body, unless we can consciously catch and then connect into that wisdom with what I would call like a sacred pause. I like to think of it like a, in New Zealand, we have this saying about fires, like you stop, drop, and roll. I like to bring that into the body. It's like stop, drop, and connect, and just pause and breathe. And from that place, then you can choose to release the feeling that is, or the discomfort that is, or the mental thought or whatever it is that's happening in your body, because you've given it sometimes it's just all it needs is a second or a microsecond to just have that space. And it's like, oh, I have a choice in how I respond to this. If I can hold this reaction or this response or this feeling or this thought in enough of in enough space, with enough grace and with enough compassion, just for a moment, then it will start to dissolve. And then from that place, we have this opportunity to actually reframe it. And we can remember that, you know what? The world's not going to die if my kitchen gets destroyed. My life's not completely in threat if all of the peanuts from the jar end up over the floor. You know, if a lipstick gets smeared across the right wall, not a life-threatening situation. It may be terribly annoying, but you're not going to die. And so we get to be the masters of our house and the masters of our body. And particularly for females, we require this breath and the sacred pause more than ever. The other thing that works incredibly well for women, and you know, when you do that stop, drop, and connect, I would encourage you to move your pelvis. You know, there's a reason why, like, I'm obsessed with Koya as well. Like, have you done the bonus Koya thing as yet,
Monica?
The Koya class?
I have.
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Let me yeah, I must admit I've had a couple of weeks, a bit difficult couple of weeks. So apart from the first training from Yuchi, I didn't do any Koya, so I started yoga.
It's okay.
But yeah, I think
there
it's
for you to do.
I was absolutely loving it when I did it, but then had a bit of a down roll, if you like. So yeah, it's a great tool. I agree.
Amazing. Yeah. So, and you know, and there's so many, there's so many things that we know are good and nutritious for us that we start and then we stop. And please, whatever comes up, please don't have any judgment for us for that and for your process. You know, I cannot even tell you, like, I'm a health professional and have been for nearly 20 years, and there's still things that I stop and start. You know, like when I first started Koya, it took me months to establish a regular practice. And there's this interesting phenomenon that I find happens particularly within women, is that there's almost this resistance to feeling good within our bodies. As weird as that sounds, it's almost like we've become hardwired and conditioned to believe that we need to be in some form of struggle or sacrifice or hard work in order to prove ourselves and in order to validate our worthiness. And what's interesting is usually that proving and that struggle and that sacrifice and whatever it is that we feel we need to do in order to justify ourselves, that's actually the very thing that we actually would be best served to step away from, because it's more of the masculine, I'm not opposed to the hustle, but you know, it's more of the masculine force. And I must do this, and I should do this, and if I don't do this, then I'm this kind of person, rather than coming from this place of internal alignment and this internal beingness and this connection where we truly are tapped in and connected to our feminine wisdom. And we get to ask the question, what lights me up? Like, what would feel truly good to me? And then from that place, we do the thing. Now, when we live and breathe and act from that place, it might be that you do exactly the same things. There are so many things now in my life, particularly from a fitness point of view, where I do the exact same things. I actually probably eat worse, like overall, than I would have, 15 years ago when I had, a massive eating disorder and was over exercising and all of these things. I do less exercise, but I love it. And I enjoy every moment of it because it's coming from a frequency and from a belief system of like, I am somebody who's happy, healthy, vibrant, and connected within my body and love my body. And so I hold these beliefs now, which also then to put out energy into our nervous system. If we're holding beliefs, and this is where I see so much stress, negative stress coming into people's nervous systems and being input into people's systems, is because we're coming from these mental thought processes of not believing we're worthy, of hating ourselves, of telling ourselves what we can't do, what we should do, what we did wrong, how we're not good enough, all of these different things. And so if we come back into the internal alignment of like, my body is amazing. Like, it is amazing. Like, how can you not believe that your body is amazing after everything that I've just shared in terms of what it's doing on a daily basis without you having to think about a damn thing? Like, it is amazing what it's doing. And so it's like, okay, like, my body is amazing. I am learning how to trust my body more and more each day. I'm always intuitively guided to exactly what is going to most nourish and most nourish my body. I always know exactly what movement to do. I am somebody who is healthy and vibrant and alive. Now, just because I am somebody who is healthy and vibrant and alive, I don't move my body every day. Like, some days it might be that I do a Koya class or a quantum flow class. I love variety. That's what my body thrives in. If I do the same thing over and over again, I'm going to be bored out of my brain. Other people, because of how their biological wisdom is made up and their epigenetic expression is what they're coded with from within utero, they actually need a lot of structure. And that allows them to feel safe within their bodies. My body feels safe when I have variety. Okay. Somebody else's body is going to feel safe when it has a very clear structure of exactly what time each day that they exercise and exactly what kind of movement that they do. I love being with people. I love having some element of competition or game or connection or something along those lines. And I have a child like that as well. So when I get him to do things, it's got to be fun or he won't do it. So if we're doing like a little circuit or something, we'll do squats and then we'll high five. So we'll do a squat and then we'll high five, or we'll try and do press ups and we'll tap, or we'll, instead of just throwing a ball to each other, we'll put it under our leg. Now that's going to drive another kind of person completely balmy. But it helps for me with a child. I'm like, I want to move my body. How do I get to make it fun for him to move his? How do we both get some kind of connection? How does it feel safe for us? And we just adapt to that. Now, what's interesting is that what is right for my unique expression, I made wrong for a very, very long period of time. And so because I was buying in to all of the different, say dogma, but it's not really dogma because it is founded in science somewhere, but all of the different opinions that were created based on like a certain way of being things, or based on a masculine way, or based on the body type that likes to move, can be very disciplined and structured. And when I actually just started to tap into my feminine wisdom and ask myself, like, what feels good for me? What does my body need to feel alive and vibrant? And when I actually started allowing myself to just play a game of experimenting with what that would feel like, that's when it started to feel fun again. Yeah. And that's when I started to feel alive again. And that's when I started to come back to this place of like, it no longer felt like a chore to be moving my body or to be, exercising or eating nutrient-dense food. And it started to bring back these elements of fun and connection again, because I was tapped back into this place and back into me. And what I find within women who, are high achievers and they are driven and they do want to make a difference and they are here to make an impact, is that so often the drive for that is coming from outside of themselves. And because it's coming from outside of themselves, it then becomes something that they have to do in order to have X result, in order to then feel worthy enough. And that is that exact definition again of coming from that place of like where we're disconnected from our inner feminine wisdom, and we're in this place of like masculine, patriarchal, hierarchical hustle of like this is what must be done in order to have a certain result. Feminine doesn't work like that. She comes from this place of like what feels good within me. Like let me connect into here. Let me come back into like, you know what, this week feels really good to sleep into 8 o'clock. Next week, like might be like full on like hustle mode because that feels good. And even just knowing where you are within your cycle can have such a profound effect on this as well, because we're literally going through a year in a month. You know, in 4 weeks, we go through in 4 different seasons. And so when we are having our menstrual cycle, like I don't want to be out there lifting heavy weights. And those are things that I used to force myself to do because like, that's just what you did. Like if you wanted results, I now know that if I give myself, literally for me, it's 2 days. 2 days is all I need. And if I just gift myself those 2 days, then I know that on that 3rd day, I will be so excited to go and like throw some weights around because that's what I love to do. It feels fun to me. If I don't give myself those 2 days, I will be a tired and exhausted wreck for probably most of the next month. And that's the difference between like an energetic, vibrant woman who's tapped into her wisdom and, you know, one that's completely ignoring her biological makeup. Now, please don't think I'm perfect because I'm not. And I'm constantly my own N=1 experiment. And I love finding out like what works for me and what doesn't work for me. As we come into the 2nd week of our cycle, we're coming more into spring. You know, our energy is like really amping up. It's a really good time to be getting shit done and like creating projects and meeting deadlines. And summer is like reaping those rewards and all of those things as well. And then we start to taper back down again as well. And so if you can honor your schedule in the sense of like, if I where I can as much as possible, I schedule my coaching clients, for example, where I'm not really talking to them the week before my period. You know, like I have a much lighter schedule in the sense of like contact time with people and me giving out in that week before and in those first couple of days than I do within those 2nd and those 3rd weeks in the middle. And so whether you're in corporate or whether you're in, you know, have your own business, or doesn't matter what it is, see if you can start looking at your cycle or looking retrospectively at your cycle and just asking yourself, okay, like when do I have the most energy? When do I feel the most inspired? When do I have the most energy to be out there in the world and doing things and, you know, making those big moves? When am I feeling more introspective and creative, or just like I want to have things come through me? And if we can look at it from the perspective of like, for a female in particular, stopping to start is one of the most transformational things that we can actually allow ourselves to do. And that stopping in order to start is the calm and the reconnection that our nervous system requires in order to then have that energy and that amplification to be able to actually go out into the world and make those magic things happen. And so all of those processes and all of those things that we're then doing, they are then also feeding back that information back into our body and back into our nervous system. And when our brain and our nervous system has done something that's felt enjoyable, that's felt fun, that's felt expansive, guess which part of our nervous system gets activated? Our parasympathetic, right?
Yes.
Our rest, our digest, our repair, our make babies. Our digestion is better. Our hair is healthier. Our skin is more vibrant. You know, our nails are stronger. Our hormones are better functioning. Our energy is higher because our feedback organs and our feedback mechanism has gone, oh, that was fun. I really enjoyed that. Oh, like, let's do more of that. When we go and do something from that place of I have to do it, but we actually are internally hating it and we're forcing ourselves to do it, then that's when we're going to get that feedback of like, that was horrible, like I didn't enjoy that, all of those different things, which our brain is going to interpret as stressful, life and danger kind of stuff. And so the more acute type stresses, the more we put our nervous system into the place of like thinking that its life is in danger, the more our system gets chronically overwhelmed. And what then happens from a functional point of view is that when our system is chronically overwhelmed or chronically stressed, what it is telling our brain is that we're no longer in a life-threatening situation. We're now in the type of situation where we're in a flood or a famine or a war or a drought. We're in this place where we're in a very, very, very prolonged stress. And biologically and evolutionarily, I hope I've said that right, when our body is in a prolonged, chronically stressful situation, the people that are going to survive, particularly from a female perspective, are the ones that could hold on to weight. Right? Because we need to have those that are the ones that are going to be able to hold on to weight and not, you know, starve to death during a chronically stressful situation, are the ones that are going to maintain the survival of the strongest, the evolution of ourselves, of humans, basically. And so that's how we also developed these mechanisms within our nervous systems as well, is to actually keep people alive. You know, like, nature's not stupid. It adapts to its environment. And so we often look at all of these symptoms that we might be experiencing, or we look, for example, you know, at the extra weight that we might be holding on to, or our love handles, or, you know, what are that things like a back around our triceps or our hips, and we like look at it as a sign of weakness, and we look at it with disdain, and we look at it, you know, we often look at it with such hate and such frustration. But actually, it's our body's unique way of sharing to us that, hey, like, actually, this is just showing us where our body, you know, requires more love, and it requires more nurturing, and it requires more self-connection and more pampering. Now, there's others of us who, for example, never go into the chronic switch. So there's people that, and you'll know that there's two types of people, right? There'll often be people where it's like, I just look at a carrot cake and I put on 5 kilos. Now, part of that is what's happening within their biology. The other part of that is what's happening within their inner state, and also what's happening within their belief systems, because they also believe that they just have to look at a piece of cake and they put on weight. And so, of course, because we literally are the creators of our reality, that's what we create. And so there's these two sides of the equation that we get to really pull into play and pull into harmony in order to really move ourselves through that. But what can also happen is that we also have people where, and this again often comes back to our unique epigenetic expression and our unique biology of where of what our dominant hormones are that are governing our body. But there will be other people or other body types, for example, who, when they're in a stressful situation, it doesn't matter how much they eat, they'll lose weight. Yeah. And that comes down to which hormone essentially within our body is driving what allows us to feel safe. And in addition to that underlying neurological inner safety of coming back into our parasympathetic and that calm and then digest and repair and make babies, which is most readily and quickly activated, number one, by moving your hips. So core, must do, or anything that just gets you down and jiggy with it. Like, I don't care what it is, but anything that just gets you moving your pelvis. The reason that moving your pelvis for anyone, but females in particular, is so powerful for you is because our parasympathetic nervous system lives in our lumbar spine and also our sacrum. So basically from about our belly button down or our waist down is where our parasympathetic nervous system is contained within our body. But because we are always living from up here, from our shoulders, from our neck, from our like sitting in front of our computers, and our pelvises are locked because we're sitting at desks or we're driving cars or we're rigid in our bodies or we're not moving, again, it's getting disconnected from, again, it's not getting the stimulation and the input to then have that movement, which then goes and drives the brain. When we have that safety in our body and that connecting to our feminine wisdom, which for females is essential, and our creative centers live within our pelvis and with our womb and with our sexual energy as well. It's where our life force vitality springs from. When they are being given that ability to move, then again, that movement from the body, from the muscles, from the organs, sends messages up to the brain to let us know that, oh, we're good, like we're in harmony, we're in flow, like it's safe to be connected. So we have that piece of it as well. And then we also have, depending on, how do I say this really simply? Depending on what system predominantly was, what layer of the ectoderm, like whether it was ectoderm or mesoderm or endoderm, that we basically were created from during utero, that is going to also have a determining factor on what hormones we need within our body to feel stress, just to feel safe, sorry. So for someone like me, I need hugs, I need touch, I need variety, I need connection with people, I need oxytocin. I'm like a puppy, right? I'm like a big puppy, and you give me all those things and I'm a very happy girl and I feel safe. You disconnect me and isolate me and I am a mess, like literally a mess, which is why online's so wonderful for me, because I found humans that were like me. You go and take another person and then we're going to be more like a racehorse. And so their hormone's going to be dopamine. And so you give that person a goal and they'll go do it. Like, it's just like, it's goal focus, it's target. And every time they tick something off their to-do list, they get another hit of dopamine, which then fuels that part of their body to feel safe. And then they go and get their other hit. Somebody who's more of like a guardian, like they'll be like a big bear, you know, and they have this real propensity to hold on to weight. Not because they are lazy, but because they need enough energy to give to their family. And so if their safety is threatened, then what will happen for them is that they will put on massive amount of weight so that they can provide for their community, so that they can provide for their family, because their hormones prolactin. The other people we have, like, they're almost they look very bird-like, and a lot of their processing happens in their brain. Okay, so with their very internal processes, they need a lot of data and a lot of things to analyze. Now they're going to be very, very fine-boned, and they're going to have very flighty digestive systems, and they're going to want to have like more cooked food, for example, which is going to be more easily digestible to their digestive systems, which are not well formed because all of their energy is going to their brain, right? And so again, like when you can, this then wraps back around to tapping back into our feminine wisdom, because at our core essence, I believe that all females and all humans know what is inherently right for them. And I also believe, and what I've seen to be true over and over and over again, is that when we give ourselves permission to actually be who we are and embody that and express that, then we also are giving others authentic permission. We're being the embodiment of that permission slip that gives others permission to authentically embody and embrace all of who they are as well. Yeah. And if we were all the same, it would be so boring. Like, we need the nurturers, and we need the protectors, and we need the people that are going to go out on the crusade and fight our mission for us and support us in that. And we need the people who are going to sit there and analyze the data so that they can give us the feedback as to what's going to be right. And we need the people who are going to steadily, who need the time and space to plod along to achieve their goal. Like, we need every single unique type that we are to all interplay and all to interconnect together. And so when we can start to see that every single individual collects to the overall ecosystem of how we actually thrive together in community and collaboration, then we can start to come back into that place of safety and again trust within our unique design and our unique wisdom yet again, and be like, it's safe to be me. I give myself permission to be all of myself, and I give myself permission to shine my unique gifts out into the world in a way that honors, you know, my feminine wisdom. And what is my feminine wisdom? Even though there's similarities, and even though there's things that we will all as females do the same, there's also things that are going to be different for each of us as well, because we require different things in order to feel safe and connected and supported from within. Because when we're unique individuals, like even females, we're not the same. Like, we're all different. We're all of ourselves. And so that is what it, you know, means to really come back into our heart and to connect back within, and to come back into that place of being like, you know what? I trust myself. I actually trust myself. And even when we're connecting with and learning from other professionals, and when we're being guided by health professionals or mentors or coaches or yoga teachers or whatever the case may be, if it doesn't feel right within your gut and within your inner wisdom, to me, that is the most important thing that we get to be connected to, and to be honoring, and to not overriding. So it's set yourself up, and I really encourage you to do this, is set this up as an experiment, you know, and it's just an experiment where it's like you literally are your own N=1, you know, you're the subject, and you're just trialing things. And it's just, you know, when you tap into your inner feminine wisdom, and you can just ask yourself, it's like, how did I do today? Like, how did I go? Like, was I connected to the foods that I was eating and nourishing my body with? How did my body feel with the movement that I gave it? Like, what happened when I completely disconnected and didn't move, or went on a social media rampage, or, you know, sat at my computer for hours on end? Like, how did that feel? Did it feel good to me? Did my energy start to wane? What were the times during my day when I felt the most alive and the most vibrant? And when you connect into that, and you can really just go through the self-assessment of coming back into, like, curiously looking at what happens when you treat your body in a certain way, and what happens when you talk to your body in a certain way, and what happens when you nourish your body you know, in a certain way, then that starts to give you your power back, and that starts to have you come into more trust with yourself, because you can then realize that you can be more intuitively led and more intuitively guided, and really trust that as well. Same if you know, eat, for example, like a whole lot of foods that don't honor your body and don't, you know, don't nourish your body. Instead of beating yourself up for all of the things that you didn't do, it's like, when did I disconnect from my feminine wisdom? When did I disconnect from what I know is right for my body? Oh, it was at this moment. And I decided to numb myself and distract myself, and I ate all of that sugar or whatever the case may be. And oh, then I felt crap like 3 days later, because you might not always feel like the hitch kind of happen at the same time. We had this beautiful example with my mum, and a couple of years ago, and I was spending a lot of time with her while she was getting the opportunity to thrive through cancer. And she finally started embodying and doing all of the things that she knew were right for her body. So she stopped, for her body. So she stopped eating gluten, and she stopped eating dairy, and she stopped eating refined sugar. She went more plant-based, which was what was right for her. And then about 4 months later, my niece had her 5th birthday party, and mum was like, whatever. And she had sugar and gluten and dairy and a glass of champagne all in one hit, I might add. And the next 3 days, I kid you not, she was crazy. Like, she was a crazy woman. She kept forgetting her words. She would ask the same question 5 times. She couldn't remember my name. She kept calling me my sister's name or my brother's name, or sometimes my son's name. Like, she was so emotionally active. Like, it was the most hilarious thing. And then she'd be like, "Have I asked that? Like, have I done that?" And I was like, yeah. I was like, "I'm not sure if you realize, but this was what you used to be when we were kids." Because she was always forgetting our names, and she was always asking the same question over and over again. And I hadn't realized that for the last 3 months, she hadn't done any of that until she had all those foods. And she was like, whoa, like, she had forgotten how much her body had changed. And so not listening to her inner wisdom was also such a beautiful gift, because it allowed her to receive feedback of what actually happens when she does honor the wisdom of her body. And so sometimes our biggest deviations from our inner wisdom can also be the biggest gifts and the biggest learnings, because they allow us to see and really experience just how powerful that inner wisdom is. And so if you actually look back and reflect, and not just with food and health and, you know, things like that, but really with like your big life experiences, you know, what are the things that you've learned the most from? And often it's uncomfortable to lean into it. And often, like, I like to think of it as like, you know, a balloon looks the best when it's just been blown up and tight. Like, that's when a balloon looks its best. It's when it's at its lightest and its shiniest and its bubbliest, and it looks really, really good. But in order for the balloon to become the lightest and brightest version of itself, it got to go through some initial discomfort in terms of blowing up the balloon. Like, starting that process of blowing up the balloon, it's hard. And you get to this like stretch point, and the balloon doesn't want to stretch anymore. And we have a choice when we're blowing it up, that we can either back off and not stretch our lungs and not stretch the balloon, or we can lean on into it, breathe through our nose, and like give it that next bit of puff. Yeah. And that's what's happening within our bodies and within our belief systems and within our ecosystems all the time. Like, it's not that the stress is bad for us. It's the type of stress and how we perceive and interpret that stress. We're not sitting there judging ourselves and beating ourselves up about the fact that we're feeling a little bit uncomfortable within our lungs when we're blowing up the balloon, because we just know and trust that that's part of the process. And so when we can come back to this place of knowing and trusting that sometimes in the expansion and in the actually stopping, that there is going to be discomfort that arises that we get to sit with and we get to be with and we just get to be present with, that also those are the moments where we're going to have the most creativity and the most transformation actually come to the surface, to be seen and to just be witnessed and to just be held in that bubble, in that safe container. And then it will start to dissolve, and then we'll start to get all this creativity that flows through us. And it's like, oh, yes, I get to take this action and this action. And when we lean into our feminine wisdom, what happens is that we're guided by the feelings in our body that feel good. We often have, when we're being guided, forward, we often have like, I want to do this, and 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 this is what feels really good. And when you tap into that feeling, you feel that in certain areas within your body, and it feels light and expansive. And then on the other side of this, I want to do this, and I want to do this, we then have like our yeah buts. And it's like, oh, but I can't do that because I don't have time, and I can't do that because I don't have enough money, or I can't do that because I don't know how, or I can't do that because I don't know that, whatever it is. And that feels dense, and that is like, we feel that in a certain way within our body as well. And so what we often do is, rather than lean into the lightness of our body, which is actually our inner wisdom speaking to us, we act from the place of the heaviness, the mind patterns, the mind programming that actually doesn't feel good within our body. Whereas the truth is, if we actually leaned into and trusted our inner wisdom more and more and more, and leaned into what was lightest, and lived from our light, and lived from our body's light and our body's truth, and took those actions from that place, we would have so much more expansion that happens in our world and in our ecosystem, because we took those courageous actions. So, whew, I feel
That's
like
information.
yeah, lots of pieces
You.
of the puzzle. Such a pleasure. So yeah, I feel like that really just kind of wraps it up and brings it back into that inner ball of coming back to your gut, and allowing your gut brain and your heart brain and your brain, your mind brain, to really kind of be talking and communicating to each other at the same time. And if we can come back into this place of feeling within our body as we're taking an action, or just trusting that we're feeling within our body as we're taking an aligned action, it gets easier and easier for those paths to get laid down within the system as well. So I'd love to know, like, if you have any questions, please voice them now, or you're very welcome to pop them into the Facebook group and just tag me in them, and I can go and answer them. But if there's anything alive and present for you right now, I'd love to be able to answer it while you're on the line.
Well, yes, thank you so much. It sort of solidifies things that I know, but it just, I don't know, sometimes you hear things and it's just the right time, and they just get through.
They do.
But yeah, I mean, that if I could speak from personal experience, and I feel like, I'm just about tapping. This course is the first exposure that I really truly have to the feminine, connecting with feminine wisdom. So I've very much
Yay.
can relate. Yes, thank you. Very much can relate to all the tiredness and the tight shoulders, and just emotional roller coaster at the moment as I sort of go through it.
Yeah.
But one of the things that sort of is big at the moment is you mentioned pain. And I've just have this pain of either right or left, and I've had it for a long time in sort of switches. And it's annoying because it's sort of, it's not sharp pain. It's not, but as I'm trying to relax, going to, particularly from meditation, it just kicks in, and I just keep telling, you know, disconnect from it, but it's just the annoying pain
Yeah.
that is there. And I just wonder if you have anything, that,
Well,
you know, any advice that
yeah. Yeah. So I think, but for me, when I'm taking responsibility for something internally, um, telling it to go away is not necessarily going to be the answer. Like, to me, the answer is always to invite it in, because what happens is that when we're like, oh, like this is so annoying, and I still do this, right? You know, like after all these years, sometimes I still am like, oh, this is so frustrating. Like, oh, this is, you know, but welcoming it into your body. You know, it's kind of like you're welcoming these things into your body like a long lost friend, and it's like, oh, like there, like what what what's going on? Like, what have you got to tell me? It's like, I like to think of it as, you know, those annoying little children that are like constantly pulling at your skirts, and they just want your attention, right? And when you actually stop and turn to the child and give them 5 minutes of attention, their love cup's kind of filled. And so if we can look at these signs and these symptoms and these pains of like, the communication signals, and so it's our body's way, our inner wisdom's way of getting us to communicate with, getting our bodies to communicate with us, so that we actually start to listen. Now, what can happen is,
You just cut out, Tammy. Can you hear her, Monica, or is she cut out for you?
it froze.
awesome. And so I like to just sit there. Yeah. Just sit there and just be like, oh, what have you got to tell me? You know, what is the message that you have to share with me? If I was to know, like, what is this about? Now, I also then utilize, very regularly, you know, healthcare professions that support me, because I also know that we do, no matter how beautifully and in integrity we live in accordance with our body's unique design, we are in a modern world where there's certain things that are going to override our defense systems and our stress mechanisms. And I want to make sure that even though I'm taking responsibility for those, I'm still getting support. And I also know that there was a good, you know, several decades where I certainly was not living in full congruence with my body's design. So I have had core problems in my body, core dysfunctions that required correcting. Yeah. And so it's about also engaging the right professional for you. So I know that our body has core requirements for, water, for example. You just can't live without good water. Good luck to you, or unless you're a breatharian and you don't drink any water at all. But that's a very, 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 you know, process to get to that kind of point. I also know that our body cannot function without nervous neurology. Like, if we sever the communication from our brain to our body, whether it's subtly or severely, our body's not going to function at our best. So I make sure that I get checked by a chiropractor, you know, very regularly, obviously not in lockdown during New Zealand, but very regularly, so that I'm making sure that my brain-body communication is optimal. I know that movement's a requirement, and there's certain ways of moving our body that are going to be more optimal than others. Like, are we getting joints to joint mobility? Are we moving our body and our joints through their full range of motion, for example? Are we getting some form of strength, whether that be lifting weights or whether that be, you know, a yoga class or whatever the case may be? And then I also know that we have requirements for nutrients, and we have requirements for optimal belief systems and mindset, and we have requirements for sleep. And so I basically know that if we fulfill those requirements across the board, that we're going to function to our optimal potential. And so if we have pain within our body, like, I can't go to a chiropractor, for example, and expect that my symptoms are going to be taken away, because if I keep putting my body through the same stresses that are overriding my body's ability to function, then the body's mechanisms are going to go, hey, like, you're still not listening, like, see here, like, there's these things going on. And so in order to work holistically and honor my inner wisdom, I get to be asking those questions that I shared at the start, like, what do you want me to know? Because your body's smart. So open up these conversations and these dialogues with your body. And what will start to happen is that your body does start to communicate back to you. And because you're now also honoring the inner wisdom of your body, like, she's going to be really stoked, like super stoked that you're actually communicating with her and actually listening to what she's sharing, and then she's going to feel appreciated as well. And then there's just more open communication, and it's not going to, you know, need to, you'll start to hear and listen to the subtleties rather than needing the massive, you know, knockdowns of the front door. Does that make sense?
And if I could just add to that, just like what I've been really obsessed with, and especially since I had River, because my body had always functioned amazingly, like up until having a baby. But then I had a really traumatic birth and had a C-section and all the things, and all the unnatural things. And so following my birth, I was just having, like, I remember in the months following, you know, postpartum giving birth, I had so much pain, like every day up my in my thighs and my glutes and hips, really bad, to the point where I got off, you know, after you have a C-section in New Zealand, I don't know about other countries, they give you this really strong pain medication, tramadol I was given, and I got off it like 10 days after I gave birth. But then I actually started taking it again because the physical pain was so intense, and to the point where I actually got addicted to the painkillers. And that was a whole other story. But one of the things that's really not talked about enough is the fact that our emotions are stored in our physical body.
Yeah.
And when you have,
particularly in our hips, for one.
I have like knots in my muscles, in my thighs and my back, my lower back, my hips. You know, I don't know, I've sort of explained it to myself at some point that I'm real empath, and I've been collecting them since childhood, you know. And it's you know, I use a foam roller, and I have to do it, and if I don't miss a day, I'm in pain, you know. It's just I just thought maybe you have just a magic wand, but I think it is just a case of working through it.
So there's so many, and like there's so many pieces to this, which Tammy can go deeper into. But one of the things that helped me so much, like, is Koya and yoga for me are just amazing. And then also, like, just what, like Tammy is saying, but just finding the movements that work well for you, because basically Koya works with the concept of somatic therapy techniques, which is based on the concept that when we go through a trauma or a difficult experience, that charge gets trapped in our body, because Tammy, you can probably explain this further, but you know, it's like if we see somatic therapy is based on the concept that when you look at an animal in the wild, right? And our bodies are animals, like we have an animal body. When you have a look at an animal in the wild, it gets chased by a lion, so it gets these hardcore traumas all the time, like literally life-threatening traumas bigger than we're experiencing. But it doesn't carry the trauma with it because its body knows what to do to release the trauma. We know how to innately release the trauma as well, but our brains have been programmed, you know, that they say in somatic therapy, like it's because we've got a developed neocortex that it overrides our innate, you know, instinct to be able to move this energy through our body. But it's really that we've been programmed to not listen to our body's innate wisdom that knows how to heal trauma, or in other words, knows how to release energy or emotion through our body, so it gets trapped in our body. So this is that's why Koya, yoga, anything that is calming and like rewiring the nervous system to a place, and then getting it to a place where we can then release that intense charge or emotion through our body, that just from what I've personally found, that's what has helped me so much in releasing pain that's kind of caused by stuck emotion.
Exactly that. So I would start, to be honest, and also the movement brings the motion to the energy, which then surfaces it, which then means that you actually have to deal with it. Now, if you run away, the energy in the motion moves the energy or moves the emotion, which brings it to the surface, which then means that you'll generally need to look at it.
Okay, yeah.
Yep. So your biggest gift, and probably also why you've resisted it, is Koya.
Yes, and I said I haven't done it. The thing is, I've been dancing every day, and I've been using, partially the movements that I've learned from you that initial time. I haven't done the other training that you have on your website, and I think it would be very beneficial. I think I'm similar, like you, Tammy did. I don't think I like routine very much. So for me, having just music and dancing freely would be the best way. But just having that background of knowing the movements in Koya would be sort of possibly
the beauty of there's like a place. The beauty of the structure in Koya, because obviously there's so many different forms of dance therapy, like there's 5 rhythms, there's a static dance, etc. And something like a static dance is you just play music and then you like let loose for like an hour, you just dance. But the Koya is literally designed, the order that you go through in the specific movements, it's amazing, because it's literally designed to take your body through a movement process that's designed to bring up the emotion, feel it, alchemize it, and release it. So an example of, and
it is structured, but it's not. Like if you would do a practice, and no one practice would ever be the same, even though you've gone through a structure. So it's structure with flow, if that makes sense, which is why it's also so powerful.
It's I notice, like, this is a really really clear example. Is the other day we went on like a 10-kilometer bike ride. And like, this is what I'm talking about with the somatic therapy. So we went on a 10-kilometer bike ride, and obviously this was like a shock to my to my body, and my body was moving in ways that it doesn't usually move, and it was really pushing me physically. And that night I had some serious emotion surfing. Like, I lost my shit at my partner. Just had this like anger explosion, where I just got really angry and was just like, ah. And then I was like, fuck, I didn't even know that was like in me. It just came out. And then what followed that was a lot of tears. So just massive emotional release. And so that's just an example of how physical movement can stir up these deep-seated emotions and bring them to the surface, because they just need to come out.
Even orgasm, for example, like deep, and the more you peel so the more you peel back the stored emotions that are held within your body, and like understand that initially when you're diving into this for the first time, you can feel like you're a little bit like a crazy person, because there's so much fear and like there's so much emotion. You're not. You're just dealing with, I don't know, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, however many years, right? We've been in denial or in repression or suppression of these emotions. So initially it can be pretty full on. And if you can just remember, like, to stay the course, because the view, no matter how tough it gets on a hike to the top of the hill, the view's always worth it at the top. Like, it's always worth it when you stay the course. But what actually will happen is that when you start to peel these things back, then you'll start to get to this point where instead of learning through pain, you'll be able to start learning through pleasure. And for females, the reason why we are designed to orgasm and to have multiple orgasms is because that's an emotional clearing out for a female. So it really opens up your system, it clears out your emotional space. The more connected that you get within your body, the different types of orgasms you're able to access, which is like, it's really a 12-week kind of course in and of itself. But when you start to open up to different types of orgasms and energetic orgasms or cervical orgasms, and you feel the energy moving through different parts of your body, but you also feel the emotions moving out, and then it's not uncommon, in fact it's very common, to have some kind of emotional release afterwards, or to have exposed patterns or belief systems or ways of being that you've been holding underneath the surface.
With that, because often after the so intimacy, I won't be able to sleep because the pain will come to the surface, so I know it's been happening to me, but it is part of my learning to go through, because I feel like I have a lot of blockages in that area as well, and I haven't really been experiencing all that much connection with my cervix and stuff. So it's so much stuff. It's wonderful having all this information and time to look it up, but I'm just it's overwhelmed. So I think going back to myself and finding what's relevant for me, because it's just so much out there at the moment.
So you get to ask yourself, like, what if it gets to be easy? Like, what if it gets to be easy? And what's the one thing that I can give myself and do that is going to support my journey and myself the most right now? Because you're telling yourself a story that there's so much and that it's overwhelming. And if you continue to tell yourself the story, that will be your reality. And all of these things will keep happening because you're not looking at the story that's present for you, which is like, great. You get to catch the fact that your subconscious is bringing to the surface. There's so much, like, I don't know what to do. This is so overwhelming. Catch that, connect to it, put a bubble around it, let it know that it's safe. Allow yourself to breathe into that and release whatever that is from your body, whether it's tension in your body or in your pelvis, just like, whew, there's a lot that I'm feeling right now. And then ask yourself, what do you get to feel? Oh, I get to remember that this gets to be easy. I get to remember that it gets to be easier to tap into my feminine wisdom every single day. I get to remember that I always know the right thing to do. I get to remember that I trust my body. I get to remember that I'm always intuitively led and guided. Oh, that's right. Okay, cool. Let me come back to that place.
Oh,
Can you
that's
see how easy that gets to be?
yes.
So please, I would really encourage you to come back into that place. Whereas versus making the excuses and the stories about why you can't do it and why it is too much, because there will always be so much information. Like there will always be so much. And the beauty of tapping into your feminine wisdom and remembering how to trust yourself and reframing and recalibrating your belief systems and just acknowledging, like, I'm feeling this. Isn't this interesting? Catching that, breathing that, releasing that, whether it's shaking, whether it's moving, whether it's like, it's a really interesting thought I'm having. What do I get to choose to believe? Like that literally is 30 seconds. Yeah, like 30 seconds of goodness that you
Yeah.
can take yourself through that is going to bring you back to your center and allow you to make a different decision.
Yeah, and it and on that as well, like it's very relevant. That in itself is a very relevant topic right now, because especially right now and recently there is so much information flying around everywhere all the time. So also as well, like if you're finding yourself that you're going you're spending a lot of time or energy going into those external sources of information and you're starting to feel disconnected from your center and your truth, then it's just having discernment and going, actually, I'm just going to take a break from all of this external information and come back to come back to my center and what I need. Because at the end of the day as well, like there's only so much that we can do with this thing here. And all the information out there is it's mind, and beyond that is your underneath the surface, it's your emotions and your heart and your soul, and feeling your emotions, and like that's the real work, and looking at what's true for me and where am I in all of this. That's the real work.
And bring everything back through your filters of discernment. Is this true? Like, is this true? Is it true that I'm overwhelmed?
Yeah.
Or am I
your body
to
always tells you what's true.
Very clever.
It's just your body at the moment. It's like, Monica, this is something you need to look at.
I just, it is unprecedented time for myself at the moment, because it's I've sort of, really took time. So I've always been very much children orientated and house orientated, and it was taking all of my time. And just since this happened, I'm kicked back so much, and I give them less attention, but they seems to play all right. Like that, and I spend most of the morning, of just concentrating on my different practices and connecting and I think actually everything's okay. The house hasn't fallen apart. The kids are all right. And I'm loving it, but and it's just finding the right, connecting and finding the right thing, because I love it. I just find it's finding time for everything, but this is another story, so I'm going to be mindful of that. Thank you very much. If I could have just one more question. Sorry, it's been so provoking and wonderful. So at the moment I'm going with a friend of mine. He is very much talking about living in a feeling of our thoughts, and he brings it back to when the feeling comes out, to see what's behind, especially with negativity. you always find the thoughts, and to be noticing and observing it, and just like that, you know, the act of noticing your own emotions and thoughts can be transformational. But at the same time, you know, I just wonder if do you still have to go through certain releases, like there's a theta healing, because that I had like a free 15 minutes session, and a lot of fear of war, you know, nothingness, a lot of fear came up. And do you still feel like it's important to go to these sessions where you have releases, or is it just purely about living in the moment and just everything will fall into place? Does that make sense? I'm sorry, I was a bit of a
Tammy, you go first.
For me, there's value in both. There's value in both. So
yeah, I agree.
It's not about, like, I think sometimes we can be running away to different sessions and different healing sessions and putting our power outside of ourselves. And there is so much inner wisdom that we have within us. And also, like, I do regularly invest in that for myself, because it's important to me to have that optimal function for myself. So it's coming into that discernment of how much is too much as well. And if I've, 50 different people at once, probably too much. Your system's going to get overloaded. It will put you into overwhelm. Like, your body just won't know what to do with it. A couple of different people, or, like a few different practices, and, just allowing your body to integrate things slowly over time. Because if you go and overload your body, if this is a new thing, with a whole lot of different information from a whole lot of different people or a whole lot of different feelers, your body won't be able to recalibrate that. And so you're kind of like, it's like overdosing on supplements and you're kind of peeing them out. Your system will only calibrate what it's safe, and if it's safe and okay for your system to calibrate. And so
Right.
I think that there's actually benefit in doing things with more grace and more compassion, and I guess less force, and slower. What can usually feel like slower, but actually allowing that integration time is what actually ends up allowing it to actually be faster in the long term, because we've actually allowed ourselves to integrate and stabilize and recalibrate those changes, rather than bombarding our system and overwhelming our system and not ever actually allowing those changes to lock in and land.
Yeah, and exactly what Sammy just said. I have the same view. And I like to use the analogy of, like, because it's a great question. It's like, where is that discernment between, like, our own empowerment and doing our own thing and processing stuff ourselves, and then, but also, when do we need some help and where's too much help? So I like to use the analogy of, like, teeth, which is really random, but it works for me. So it's like, we have our practices and our tools, like, Koya, yoga, meditation, breath work, baths, whatever, like, nature walks, whatever works for you. And that's like doing that on a regular basis. And that's like brushing. We can brush our teeth, right, every day. We floss them, use mouthwash, whatever. But then sometimes when it comes to, we need a filling, or, bloody root canal, or something hardcore, we can't do that ourselves. And it's like, there are times when we need the dentist. So it doesn't mean that, like, we're going, it's like, oh, I'm like lazy, or I can't empower myself enough to just friggin' brush my teeth twice a day and I need to go to the dentist every day. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it's like we have both. We've got our practices, and I definitely believe that it's our obligation to learn the tools that work for us, that we can, you know, apply every day to process our emotions and etc. And then also to have some assistance from time to time, or as much as we need. Like, we might be going through a really hard time in our lives, and we need like weekly sessions with a healer, and then we may be sweet and we have like 12 months where we don't. So it's just, it's really that discernment. I hope that makes sense.
That's a good analogy. Yes.
It's a really good analogy. And park it. Like, sometimes there's things like you won't be able to move through with yourself. Jot that on a piece of paper or have a pad. Park it so that when you do go and see somebody, it's like, these are all the things that were coming up for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I think that, like you said, the first step would be to establish this routine. I've tried to get up, because it's like, it was 5 o'clock in the morning. I got up at 4 just to have a bit of time, you know, to just settle myself, because it was a busy day yesterday. But yeah, just having that time with our children as well is like really important to me. But then I don't like to get up in the morning, so you just have to balance it. Like you said, some days you have to feel into your body and say, okay, today I need to sleep in today, or today I can get up in the morning. And actually that was nice when you said that, because it just gives me permission, because I always was after some sort of routine. I felt like I have to be disciplined, you know. So it's wonderful to hear that different way of looking.
You get to create your routine, because that's what tapping into your feminine wisdom is. Like, honoring your wisdom and your routine and your structure, and from that place you can do what feels right. Won't always be comfortable, but you can do what feels true to you.
Thank you very much for this session. It's been wonderful. So very lucky.
You're lucky that you're the only one on. You got
I know.
You got like a VIP treatment. Awesome.
Thank you.
So
Thank you
good.
very much. And I'm so happy, because, you know, I'm in the UK, and I don't even remember now how I came across you know, you Chi, but I did, and it's wonderful. And you know, it is
that's awesome. You just
so
appeared.
Yeah,
I love that. Like, and that's such a great sign of you know, like, these last few months I've just stripped away so much of like strategy and how I should be doing things, and just like made number one priority my vibe work and doing my inner work. And it's so funny to see what happens when you prioritize that, because just naturally, like, me and Steve both have been doing that, me and my partner, and things have just been coming to us. Like, we're just attracting, we're signing some amazing clients, like, just been coming to us. Exactly. Magnetism, feminine magnetism. It's and it's so easy to get caught up in the, you know, that false paradigm of you know, what's going on in my external world, and is everything okay, and is everything getting done, I got to get shit done, and and forget about this, what's inside is the most important thing. So it's really amazing place when we can all return to that center and see what magic comes as a result of it. Yay. Thank you, Tammy. Thank you, Monica.
My pleasure.
You're so welcome.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Take care.
I will. Bye.
Bye.